Game 77, Brentford versus Sheffield United on the 13th of April 2024, titled Hats Off. Off to London for today's TalkSport live match. Normal routine prevails, including a top-end platform judgment call. Small wins as per usual. Into my normal position on a two-seat seat with no window, but I can look through the gap to the left of the seat in front for a blurred countryside perspective should I want to. I sit minding my own business as we crawl on the Oxford-Marylebone tube-like train. The carriage fills with London-bound passengers. The four-seat block in front of me fills up, and I didn't notice just when, but a gent sat backward-facing on the train against the window I would peer out for my countryside view. Not that interesting, other than every now and again his reflection would appear to me on the window. Now, as you know, I am a person or people watcher, and I had a degree of envy. His reflection was good, and by that I mean he had a grey beard which was well manicured and full of body. He had long grey hair, swept back, and a good thick amount, no patchy or balding spots. His glasses suited his head and face structure. I actually marvelled at how his sense of well manicured casualness was put together. It was a look I envied. Credit where credit was due. He had that look of a moneyed person who, even when casual, looked elegant and expensive. My pathetic attempt at a grey beard sort of falls between a down and out or the archetypal old geezer who should be in a zip-up cardi and Velcro slippers. There's a lot to be said about making the most out of what you have. He did, but I don't. I try to, but use the classic phrase that it's difficult to polish a turd. Anyway, over the course of the journey, his reflection saw myself looking at him, and he acknowledged my gaze with a nod. Oops, awkward. By the time we had arrived at Marylebone, the carriage was full, and as is my wont on these full carriage days, I sit tight until the carriage empties before getting up, straightening out, and then exiting. The gent arises and looks at me and smiles and says, "Love the hat, sir." I nod and say thanks, and he is gone. Now that's a lot of words to set out a scene. Nothing more or less than I like your hat. Why do I remember such an innocuous moment? Well, you may or may not have garnered from these episodes that I'm not a lover of myself due to previous experiences in life. And presently I am in a trough of self-despising due to a large amount of weight gain. About 5 years ago, my food intake and alcohol consumption was pretty prolific. And really all I wanted was to live to the age of my waist size. It was a spiral and I was in love with my food. I still am. And when you don't care about yourself, it's easier to eat than to do something about it. Going back to the man on the train, he was making the most of what he naturally possessed. I wasn't. I do not love myself and still don't. But diabetes changed that for a while. The doctor hauled me in and read the riot act. He sat behind his desk and basically said, "Don't eat that, don't drink this, and don't look at that." Well, it was a picture of his wife in a bikini on a beach holiday. He shouldn't really have had it on his desk then, should he? Now, I wasn't frightened of dying with diabetes, but didn't want the situations I have witnessed where some persons who hadn't heeded the doctor's advice were losing lower limbs. And I was turning up to adapt their homes with my other job and realising they would possibly now lose their other limbs if they didn't change their lifestyle. I do need my legs, even with a fucked knee. Anyway, he hit the spot during his dressing down and I was like a rabbit in the headlights as my sad existence, which revolved around food and alcohol, was being routinely taken away from me. It was such a harsh bollocking that my gallows humour took hold, and at one point during his bollocking he said, "I am prescribing you metformin. Whilst it is very good, it could give you loose stools," to which I replied, "Well, that's okay, they'll go with the wobbly chairs in the kitchen." My wife giggled, but he didn't. I knew the game was up and, like a mental health case, took the advice on offer to the extreme. I became a bore. I went to Diabetes Friends Club where we played Guess What You're Allowed to Eat game. That surprised even my wife with the stuff you cannot eat, and learned that in our supermarket, when shopping, life for a recovering diabetic ends after the vegetable area and the plain unprocessed meat section. Gradually my sausage-like fingers returned to fingers, and the weight started to come off in a steady fashion. And soon I could go back to shopping on the high streets. I lost 6.5 stone, and yes, I felt a little better about my body shape, but not a lot else. I picked up a pork pie hat, which I think works well with my oblong-shaped head, and have continued with my pork pie hat set. And that was where handsome Harry on the train said about my tit for. But in my sublime consciousness, I wanted and still craved food. Remember the phrase sausage fingers and pork pie hat? Everything about me screams eating. And for a long time, some 4 years, my mind controlled my eating to just fruit and vegetables. But then, like an alcoholic with that first drink, life got very tough and the wagon was falling off. And I am tubby again. And food comes in tubs. Great. I am disappointed and embarrassed with my shape. But what can stop me now? Diabetes? Well, that card was played, and for a while I heeded the advice. But let's be honest, a steak bake, a bar of chocolate and a latte is tastier and quicker. I am 60-fucking-1. Nobody looks at me anymore thinking, he's a bit alright. Laugh out loud, nobody ever did. So I took my little win with my pork pie hat attire. Oh, and I do love a pork pie, especially with a bit of Tommy K. Here's a question for you, just a quick question. It's lunchtime, you go into a supermarket for a snack. Options are a green banana. Yes, a fucking green, not yellow anymore, ripen at home. No, I want to eat it now. So you end up getting a Mars bar. Haha. I go to London Bridge and sat on the concourse thinking at least my hat looks good and contemplating Brentford versus Sheffield United. Brentford were on a 9-match winless streak and sinking towards the foot of the Premier League. I think they are safe as there are 3 worse sides currently occupying the relegation spots, and the league were deducting points off other sides willy-nilly, except for the rich kids of course. I wandered lonely as a journeyman commentator into the office block and up the lifts to the studios where the early kickoff was in full swing. Pleasantries were exchanged and banter given, and of course the obligatory judgment of each other's upcoming matches were taken. Chris Wilder's blades were certainties to go down, and it was a shrewd move by the man to undertake half a season of no real managerial judgment. It wasn't his mess, it wasn't his side, but he has galvanised them to get the best out of them, and in doing so is doing what is required. Maybe next season it may be more of a regulation management situation. Whatever league they are in, they might by October need to be in the right place in the table, or else. The sun is out as my pictures come through, and inside my headphones a clean cut of the stadium atmosphere builds and immerses me in the G-Tech Community Stadium. Team news done and placement of water, action button and paperwork done as well. 5 minutes before on-air time and a cursory stroke obligatory wee break does ensue. Headphones back on and into the bubble. Now, in my normal dry-wit way, I would say it was a red and white striped derby today. But the colour clash has been averted and now sees the Blades wearing yellow. I don't know why. Brentford wear red with white stripes, while Sheffield United wear white with red stripes. It's not that difficult, is it? Into the game and Ben Brereton Diaz runs the length of the pitch for Sheffield, but scuffs his shot as his energy level saps at the vital moment, before Brentford start to take hold of the game. There is quite a bit of anxiety drifting down off of the terraces from the Bees fans, and Tommy Frank is chewing his gum with a ferocity that shows an equal measure of anxiety too. Step forward in the second half, Mikkel Damsgaard, and didn't he just do that? A break by him down the left of the Blades' defence, and a cross was turned in past his own keeper by the legs of our blaster. When your luck is out, it's out. Shortly after, a well-worked free kick saw Damsgaard volley in from the edge of the box. Great technique, lovely connection, and 2-0. But no, VAR saw an infringement and ruled out the sweet strike. But in stoppage time, Frank Onyeka did double Brentford's advantage and seal the 3 points. But Damsgaard, and remember I started this episode talking about hats off, I am my most harshest critic. And I talked of a chap who was coolness personified on the way up. But I slip under everyone's radar except my own. But I couldn't help noticing this talented Danish youngster during the match. He's just 23 years old and playing in the Premier League, but I think he's having hair issues. He possibly doesn't worry about it, but to me his high forehead was up there with Ant McPartlin's and Vincent Kompany's of yesteryear. And sadly for a 23-year-old, he is trying to bring his hairline forward, which means at pace, and he is reasonably quick, it lifts up and folds back on itself like a soft top on a sports car. And then when he has a smearing of perspiration, almost disappears, giving him a sort of clown-like side panel haircut. You know the one where they pull the string and the sides elevate. Oh, I maybe am being a little harsh, but this balding blobmeister needs some context for his own failings. I travel home checking, as I always do, the local scores and the reports of the game I've just done, before feeling a little smug, as on the report of the Brentford vs Sheffield United game, Mikkel Damsgaard's picture is attached, and it justifies my descriptive talents above. Talking of high foreheads, Mikkel, mine goes right back from the front to the back of my neck, and that is why I wear a pork pie hat. Game 78, Saudi Arabia under-23s versus Tajikistan under-23s on the 16th of April 2024. Titled, The Eye Has It. Brucey bonus time. Today sees me embark on my journey to the Gravity Media in West London studios and a handful of under-23 tournament matches over the next few weeks, courtesy of the Trevmeister and the AFC Cup. Best news about it, the top three will go on to feature in the Paris Olympic football tournament later in the summer. I aim to be in by 3 p.m. and I catch the train at a modest time. I sit and let my mind wander. Round and round and round it goes. Where it will go, nobody knows. And the answer is nowhere. Nothing stands out on my travels in today. But as per normal, I have an earworm as I look out of these hypercritical eyes. In my head is Frankie Goes to Hollywood and their part cover of the Jerry and the Pacemaker hit Ferry Across the Mersey. The words, people they rush everywhere, each with their own special care. A superb line that is so true when viewing life in general. I think I notice it more now. Every step I take is painful, but people are all locked inside their own thoughts and maybe their own worlds. I don't know, but maybe I'm blessed with a talkative, strong-willed mind. No, I don't think so. When you do your own work, which is demanding, and like me, you've struggled to cope with tough times, commentating on football or sport is like escapism to a degree. I am conscious that it is a very measurable job in terms of performance by others, but it doesn't really have those pressures that your everyday job has. So there is a sense of serenity about doing it at times. Anyway, I arrive at the studios and chat with dear old Brenners. I'm sure he's at least 10 years younger than myself, so dear old Brenners, maybe not. But if you say it in a blowers type of way, it has an acceptance to it. Henry Blofeld, a cricket commentator with a vocal brogue and turn of phrase which is so quintessentially British, like a fine oil painting of a village green cricket match, my dear friend. My admiration of commentators over the years is based mainly on tone and phrase, not sex or gender. A voice that wraps you up and a turn of phrase that explains without being condescending is for me paramount, along with passion and a fine dry wit used at the appropriate times. Brenners has this ability, softly spoken unless you're not in the studio when you should be, then he can drop into angry ant mode. I hope he likes my style. We bounce off each other when conversing outside of the studio, almost knowing that we are talking in a general piss-taking mode over maybe some of the football on show, but feeling more like two kids who have found a dirty mag and know they're going to be scolded by Victorian dad if found looking at the said mag. Maybe the said Brenners knows how to tease out any lurking verbal misdemeanours I have in my head. All part of the service, I'm sure he'd say. We discuss today's game, Saudi versus Tajikistan, when Cameron pops out of his booth at half-time. We talk about his match and it hasn't really come alight, he says. He then asks who I have and I reply, Saudi versus Tajikistan. Oh, you've got Tajikistan, he says. I look at him for a while and think, what did he say? So, without causing any alarm at what this point I think is a mispronunciation, I mention Tajikistan again in another question. Yes, he says, Tajikistan should be soundly beaten by Saudis. He said it again. What is this Tajikistan? Now I need clarification and ask bluntly, Tajikistan? Yeah, he says, I thought you were taking a piss when you said it to me. It's Tajikistan. It's a common error, but there is another I in there if you check. I was caught out before. I look, and lo and behold, it is there, Tajikistan. Now 61 years of Tajikistan has been altered mentally to the correct pronunciation of Tajikistan. This for me will be like riding a bike, but now using just one pedal, totally alien. You're glad you've been told and worried you're going to get it wrong. My team layout sheet has now got a big Tajikistan scrawled across it to remind me constantly it is Tajikistan. A little ashamed of my oversight, I sat in my fridge-like booth talking aloud, Tajikistan, Tajikistan. This is so easy when you're not under any pressure or duress. But my test comes on the studio mic test. I fumble like a first slip catcher, but grab it at the second attempt. Oh, how my mind is reveling at the serene mental equilibrium in my head, now wobbling like a spinning top running out of steam. What is the problem? The problem is me. I am turning a molehill into a mountain. In the following moments ahead of the broadcaster idents, I try and focus on positions and players without dropping into the Tajiki. Cans on, voice above with a countdown to the sound bars with tone before the broadcaster idents come up for the broadcasters to sound check. I deal with Tajikistan. It's not a fluid pronunciation, a little staccato, but it was okay. You know, maybe as I write these episodes down and bring them to life, I am uncovering a trend in my life. It was there in my sporting life. Nerveless equaled poor performance. I had sereneness on the way in, and then for me the eye has it and sends me spinning. Maybe I am right in life or my life. Maybe leaving my glass dried up and in the cupboard is the best policy. It is not half full or empty or in danger of getting smashed. Safety in a cautious way, but then some might say that is not living life to the full. You need to experience things and fail to learn. Learn from your mistakes. In that case, nobody is more educated than me. I wonder as I give this insight if all commentators have gremlins in their minds or concerns or sweat the small stuff. Would be interesting to find out. Sadly, most of the ones I have admired have passed away. But maybe, just maybe, I will elaborate on those I enjoyed and those who breathed life into the pictureless commentaries and those who added lustre to the visual. In my honest opinion, there is a world of difference between the two commentary codes. Saudi Arabia under-23s versus Tajikistan basically provides a 2-0 victory for the Saudi 23s, and for us commentators a little scouting work. Some players stand out with maturity when playing, and during research, yes, they are the ones who are playing up in the top leagues. They just look like older players playing with youngsters, not making the errors the young ones do. It is, as always, a joy to describe, and yes, I do it my way, setting the scene, looking out for jeopardy, and using a little dry wit when required. The job is complete before leaving. Brenner's checks I'm aware of my next game and time. He does it in a sensitive way, but he and I both know I have previous. I catch an Uber to Paddington and board the train. Is there any satisfaction at a job well done? Well, in a world of no response, silence is a plus point. After a sprightly 50-odd minutes, I arrive at Longhambra. I climb into the car and realise I hadn't done any of my other work today and felt somewhat guilty. I can earn more doing one level access shower job than gallivanting around London, but enjoyment is something that matters, and whilst doing today's job, I wasn't in the real world that I constantly struggle with. The political landscape of our world constantly changes, and today I too have my own political feel, as the eyes had it for me. So please remember, it is Tajikistan and not Tajikistan.